that was the biggest story and that this was huge. I can't remember it. So
hurricane?
It was hurricane. So 30 days or less than 30 days, under 30 days in Trump world is they pack a year of stories. So every day there's going to be something else, and I'm sure there'll be something. What's today? Tuesday. By Thursday, that will be huge. Mm-hmm. And
Kanye's Thursday.
Kanye's Thursday. That's right.
Yes.
I think the Trump apology was necessary and deserved. Nothing that what happened to Kavanaugh should never happen to an American citizen. It was disgraceful, and America deserves an apology for it as well. But Trump shouldn't be the only person apologizing. Feinstein should apologize. Schumer should apologize. The media, Avenatti, they all should apologize because they knew what they were doing. They knew that they could ruin a family for a political motive, for political power. It's probably one of the worst things I've ever seen, and believe me, I've seen a lot of bad things.
Yeah, I've seen some things. Do you think, what are you hearing, Jesse, about midterms and this vote? We're less than 30 days out.
Well, I feel like the Republican base is very activated, and it's because of the Kavanaugh confirmation. And this whole thing, which just happened yesterday night, was a real microcosm of the Trump presidency, because here he is, he's just nominated his second justice and has him confirmed. And he's exposed the left as kind of Me Too maniacs, and he's energized his base. And all the left can do is talk about the words he used and the optics of the event. Meanwhile, he's put in 41 district court judges, 26 court of appeals judges, and this is his second justice. What the left needs to do is take inventory about what happened in this fight. Pivot to another topic, as this is not working. Stop talking about impeachment, stop talking about the Electoral College, and just move forward. Instead, they're acting like he's the first politician to do something political at the White House. I mean, I'm shocked. Barack Obama never did anything political. He was a statesman. Oh, wait a second. I just Googled it. Barack Obama had the exact same ceremony for Sotomayor a day or two after she was sworn in at the White House, where he invited the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, the leaders of the Senate Judiciary Committee, and they talked about single mothers, and they talked about diversity and immigration, you know, those kind of things that made up the Obama political coalition. So when Barack Obama does something, it's never political, but when Donald Trump does something, it's nakedly partisan.
Well, let me just say Dean Martin, and I love it. I can't believe this. I mean, it's really hip.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan.
Because
he needs a tumbler of whiskey.
You think that would do it for
Another
him?
one?
You don't know what's in here. What's in Kennedy? What is
Hey, this is a family show. Anyway, you know, it's so obvious. What a different tone for Sotomayor's swearing versus last night. Last night was really, you know, revenge of the Republicans in the end zone doing a dance, right?
Yeah, it was an apology.
And so to me, and the apology out of line totally. Remember, that poll that we showed a moment ago, oh gosh, we didn't show you, but guess what? Most Americans disapproved of the way the Republicans handled this as well.
More so the Democrats.
No, not much. I think it's about the same. And the bottom line is 51% of Americans did not approve of this man's confirmation. In addition to which, a majority of Americans believe Professor Ford, not Justice Kavanaugh. So this is going to go on for some time. And if you want to get into women, Dana, wow, American women are overwhelming in their disapproval of Kavanaugh. So when you hear people say, oh my gosh, what we see here is President Trump basically having a campaign ad at the White House and throwing it in people's faces, that's what it felt like.
He was apologizing to a family whose lives were ruined.
Why doesn't he apologize to Miss Ford?
I think
he doesn't owe her an apology.
I am owed an apology because I have to sit next to Juan, who has just been really rough the last couple of weeks.
Is Kennedy, who hasn't gotten a word in edgewise.
Well, I'm just watching the fireworks with a basket of popcorn here. I don't know why it's in a basket, not a bucket. This is what I will say. We are in a very politically strange time because both people can be right. You can have independents who are outraged by the way Democrats behaved, because all of this could have been going on before or during the confirmation process, especially early on, and most of this could be absolutely avoided, including the embarrassment not only of the Kavanaugh family, but also of the Ford family. But it was Democrats who were being so hyper-political, and that's why they're taking such a big hit with independents. But also, Judge Kavanaugh, you're right. He isn't polling very well with women right now, But it doesn't matter because he's not running for office, is he? No, he's got a lifetime appointment. He never has to interview for a job ever again. So that is pretty much settled. So now what Democrats are doing is they're essentially just making stuff up and acting like they're outraged that a politician would have a political moment. And if you look at this in contrast with some of the rallies that the president has, like those are hyper political moments. That's when he goes out and really fires up the base. I think what you're seeing here is a lot of people who are supporting Justice Kavanaugh felt like he was going to be blocked from confirmation, and the fact that they actually got a win and it was facts victorious over feelings, that was the boisterousness in that crowd. You saw a lot of people, especially on social media, shocked and surprised and relieved, and that's why they were celebrating.
You know
So
who
let
we
me
need to
just
hear
say-
from right now, Juan, if you don't mind? You know, James Carville, who said, "Is the economy stupid?" Well, in 2018, apparently it could be Kavanaugh. That's the big issue. Here's what he had to say.
Kavanaugh is going to be an issue in 2018. He's going to be an issue in 2020. The Democrats are going to keep digging up stuff. The press is not going to stop all of the things that they're working on about Kavanaugh.
The press is not going to stop, Greg.
I love he gets dressed for Halloween so early. I have advice for Democrats, and they may not listen to me, but they're trying to create a battle in which all men are the oppressors and all women are the victims. This is part of the leftist identity politics strategy. Women as victims, men as oppressors. The problem with this is that women live with men, they love men, and vice versa. And the bigger problem with this gambit is that there are black men and Hispanic men in the Democratic Party who are as concerned about false allegations as everybody else in this world. So you may sit there and make it's going to be about oppressors versus victims, but there are people that are sensibly saying, like, well, wait a minute, what about due process? And it's going to be men in the Democratic Party who are actually going to start thinking about
You
that.
also have men who vote.
Right.
And, you know, when you have people like Senator Hirono from Hawaii saying things like, men need to step up and shut up. That's really off-putting. Elizabeth Warren, her comments sort of reflect the same thing. And I think Hillary Clinton and some of the more progressive women in the Democratic Party, and she puts herself in that camp, although she may not be there honestly, they really want to exacerbate this gender civil war. And it's one of the worst things that can happen. And it's very, in its own way, paternalistic and belittling.
And let's remember James Carville was the one that said about one of Bill Clinton's accusers, if that's what happens when you drag a dollar bill through a trailer park. So he's not clean on this whole Me Too issue. They had a whole war room run by James Carville to go after women who accused Bill Clinton of doing things. So it scares me that he already seems like he knows the media is continuing to dig in on Kavanaugh.
Well, here's the
Last word,
reason
Juan?
why. So you have the president last night saying that Kavanaugh has been proven innocent. Again, this is like sticking your finger in the eyes of someone who's down. You know, this is like what happened Saturday night in Vegas where the guy's jumping over the ring and starting a fight in the crowd. You think the fight's over. You guys
Wait,
won.
you just said the fight's not over.
So the fight in the political terms, Greg, is not over because guess what? You guys talk about independence. Independents disagreed with the Republican handle this 53%. It's not even close. So they didn't like Democrats handling it, they didn't like but they do believe Professor Ford. And the key here is that when it comes to, you know, Kavanaugh talking about, boffing and devil's triangles. And,
back to that.
I didn't have many drinks, you know, I just had a beer. People don't believe that. They know this guy was trying to cover. And so, you know
Can I
what?
ask you something?
The politics is
Devil's
just
triangle.
outrageous.
Do Democrats believe in redemption?
Of course. Why not? I'm a Christian.
Well, it just doesn't seem like there was any grace extended to Brett Kavanaugh throughout this entire process.
Oh, I disagree. And in fact, one of the arguments that Republicans make is, geez, there was a mob. Oh, gee whiz. How unfair, no due process. This wasn't a trial. This was about a man's character and whether he was telling the truth
that's what makes
as
it
he's
almost
being
worse.
elevated
Yeah,
to
let's
the
do it at
Supreme
every
Court.
job interview.
Yeah. So
Do it every
in that
job
case,
interview.
he failed.
Be careful, the
He's
mob might
failed.
know the
Juan, he's got a robe on right now.
No.
Yeah.
In other words, you can
The
run
board
over people.
vote.
And he's going to be
Voting,
there
good
his
job.
whole life. Juan.
You can run over people, but guess what? People are going to remember.
It's not called running over when you have the majority.
Well,
Oh,
guess
yeah.
what?
Yes, it is.
That's
You don't
Juan's
have the
favorite
majority.
line.
Yes, they do.
Hillary Clinton calling for incivility against Republicans. Can you believe that? Ahead on the 5.
Nothing but a big old rock.
It's interesting. It's like one of those things that where people who had experience in a previous administration, they end up often working for the next administration if they align party-wise. A lot of people from the Clinton world ended up working for President Obama, though not as many as you would think. Dina Powell had experience working for President Trump as a national security advisor. So like Nikki Haley, gained a lot of foreign policy experience in that time. And then Rick Grinnell just got confirmed by the Senate. That was a tough confirmation. And President Trump apparently loves what he's doing in Germany and really having an impact there. So I think that for her, she was able to leave on, Nikki Haley, able to leave on her own terms. A lot of people don't know when to leave. We've talked about that before, right? You don't, like sometimes.
You mean Jesse?
Like you stay too long, or you like something. And I think 2 years is a very natural time to leave. I think the only curious thing is why they announced it today. Like, why not wait until after the midterms?
That was my question too.
I think maybe they thought. I think that because the president had held it as a secret for 5-6 days, he got Kavanaugh ceremoniously sworn in last night, and he was ready to turn the page. I mean, he's moving at an accelerated pace. They have a lot of things on the table right now that are all in place. She won't be the only person to leave at the end of 2 years. And remember, it is said that she told the president 6 months ago she wanted to leave. She had, the thing is, if your boss really likes you and you like them, but you know you're going to have to go, you start having those conversations early. You plant the seed so that it won't become abrupt and a problem later on. So he's got a lot of.
That's kind of sketchy to me, because I think in this administration it would have been a leak. And no leaks. And I mean, you know, the top people in the administration said they didn't know. That's kind of weird to me. But Greg, I just want to come to Ivanka. Her first daughter.
No. You guys are. Is it a coincidence or not a coincidence that Donald Trump is meeting with Kanye West later? So we all
Ambassador
Kanye West. It makes total sense to me. Talk about leaving on top, though. If you think about everything that's been going on in the world since Nikki Haley's been around, with the exception of Syria, which is still a problem, you've got the North Korea thing is huge, and trade and terror. We're entering this new world with China. This is like the most consequential 2 years I've seen in recent history of things that are actually going on and taking place. Why she's leaving, I think you're close. It had to do with private jets. But the story I heard from the New York Times is that she threw an ice cube at Mike Pompeo on Air Force One, and it's a pattern of abuse, of using frozen water as a dangerous projectile.
It's like Frozen.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, we'll take that.
Breaking Ice Cube news. You can bring that next year.
Exactly.
Thank you, Greg. Antifa protesters taking over the streets in Portland. Greg takes on the, quote, angry mob. That's next on The Five.
In that city, as lawless mobs are in the Senate office building. This video from October 6th shows Antifa assuming the role of armed crossing guards, threatening citizens with physical harm, even chasing them down with weapons. My favorite part, a pasty white loser attacking a law-abiding driver for being white.
Just go that way. Because I told you to.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Don't hurt.
Yeah, brother.
Just go.
Yeah, you little white little.
Really?
Yeah. You're a white little whitey, aren't you?
How is that not a hate crime? And how is this possible? Well, when Portland's mayor, Ted Wheeler, figured it might make him unpopular to enforce the laws, anything's possible. And you know the police aren't there because they feel they'd be punished for doing their job. Afraid that they might look too oppressive against the violent mob, Portland's leaders simply hand over its authority to govern its citizens to a violent mob. You know what? I better not use the word mob.
When you see people like Ted Cruz getting chased out of restaurants by a mob.
You're not going to use the mob word here.
It's totally a mob. It is without a doubt. There's no other word for it. It's put up the video of Ted.
Stop.
Oh my goodness. So how dare you call a mob a mob? Now the word mob is no longer allowed to be used when looking at a mob. You better apologize, because as we're learning, mob rules, especially in Portland. The mob shows up and takes over without a fight. What a great lesson for other creeps who live near places where leaders refuse to do their job. But hey, if Republicans are evil, anything is permitted. Right, Hillary?
You cannot be civil with a political party that wants to destroy what you stand for, what you care about.
Fact is, in a world where your silence is demanded and leaders are safely hidden from the rage that they enable, how do we know who's really in charge? Just look for the mob, then move to Texas. I got to go to you first, Kennedy, because you were born and raised in Portland.
I was raised there.
Yes, you weren't born there.
No.
No.
Born in the mean streets of Indianapolis.
Wow.
Literally on the street. My mom squatted there.
How can those people not be charged for hate crimes?
No, it's awful because the police are not allowed to engage
Yes.
with people like that
Because the mayor says so?
Because Ted Wheeler is horrible to law enforcement in and around the city. And it's unfortunate because, you know, they have tried to do what they can in order to help with the homeless problem, which is really, unfortunately, out of control, and it is affecting quality of life there. And crime has gone up. It used to be called the most livable city in the world, and it was a destination place for people from expensive parts of the country to move to because there was affordable housing. It's incredibly beautiful. It is arguably one of the most beautiful cities in the country, and Ted Wheeler is incredibly unpopular, and it's because of decisions like this. But then he talks out both sides of his mouth, and he will go to a meeting with civic leaders, and someone will say, hey, you know, there are a bunch of homeless people in Old Town and they look like zombies. And, you know, the police tell us that you've tied their hands and they can't do anything about it. He's like, if a cop tells you that, I want their badge. So he tries to sound like Tough Stuff McGillicuddy when it's politically convenient to him. But he's really run a beautiful, incredible city into the ground, and it is unforgivable.
That's what happens. Juan, okay, here's my worry. If the police and government abdicate their responsibility and also the left believes that you can't protect yourself, isn't this possibly the best commercial you could ever have for the NRA?
The NRA? Well,
yes, the gun lobby. This is what, if the police aren't going to be there who are armed to protect you, all you can do is protect yourself. I would, if I were the NRA, I would run that every day.
I see. So in other words, it's not enough that you're in a car and you could run them over. You want to shoot them.
No, I'm saying that you have to protect. The police are there. The police are there to protect you.
Well, I'm saying,
and if they're not there, you have to defend yourself.
Look, I think this is way overstated. But you know, to me, this is like culture wars on the part of Republicans. Let's go after these.
So
homeless,
this never happened.
These homeless.
Those aren't homeless people.
A lot of them are homeless people. I think Kennedy's right. A lot of these people. By the way, I remember going through this with you before. I think this was when there was some protest in D.C. You said, look at these I mean, a lot of these people are troubled people, and then they join in with an anti-Trump movement, and then you say, oh, that's the opposition. That's why that's a mob. This is no mob. Look, there's a freedom
That's not a mob.
Look, those people were misbehaving, and they should be held accountable for their actions. So I'm all for it, because I don't want anybody coming after me, my family, or you guys on the side. But I'm just saying,
you shouldn't feel unsafe in your own city. I mean, it's unacceptable in Berkeley or Chicago.
It's unacceptable in Seattle, New York. I think this problem with people who have mental issues, the homeless, and that's growing in our country. But I think your thing is so curious to me because, gee, isn't it the Republicans who talk about MS-13, who talk about fake
take care
jobs,
of them.
Something about it.
We do something.
Pizza parlors where suddenly crazy conservatives come in shooting. You don't talk about that.
Yes, we do.
When does a mob become a mob, Juan? Is it 11? Is it 12? When does misbehaving become breaking the law? I mean, come on, you got to have some standards, and this place is now a loony bin over there because the mayor's a nutcase. Listen, this is what's happening, and Hillary has gone full Maxine Waters. You don't go full Maxine Waters ever. She went there. And this is why. It's because, like you said, if you believe your opponents are evil, the ends justify the means. That's why you see the doxing and the hate mail and the threats and, you know, all this awful, as Juan likes to call it, misbehavior. I think it's a little more dangerous that it's because liberalism needs the state, the power of the state, to enforce their ideology. Democrats are completely shut out of power. They don't have any power in Washington, D.C. So what they do, instead of using words and their intellect to persuade, they're using mobs to intimidate. Because that's the only way that liberalism can be achieved, through enforcement, through state power of their ideas, and that's getting a little dangerous.
You know, imagine if those were conservatives.
Yes, like can you imagine the Tea Party running around?
Tea Party, and they're like, well, they're so rude, but they're putting away their.
I don't have to imagine they were.
No, they never. You couldn't find tape of that. I'll give you $100 for every piece of tape you find of them running around the streets.
Jesse's exactly right. It's statism versus individual.
I wondered if maybe someone could do an experiment. Remember, within the last year or so, you did a couple pieces about the cost of a U-Haul.
Yes.
A one-way U-Haul from California to Texas, and I'd be curious to find out what it's like in Portland. It is a beautiful city, but if you can't have law and order, you will not want to live there.
Yeah, and they're also moving the homeless to specific areas of the city that are away from people who are wealthier. So they're hurting new homeowners who are just moving in, and then all of a sudden they have people
And small businesses.
shooting up.
Hey, didn't you guys have
Same
us
in
moving
Seattle.
out of San Francisco because they were pooping on the street? And
Yep.
you have them moving out of New York because of
Language
de
line.
Blasio.
Yep.
You have everybody moving out of everywhere.
It's the poop.
Oh, I see.
Kanye West is heading to the White House. That's next.
Get it? Who was back in the headlines last week for wearing a MAGA hat during his SNL gig, is set to make another huge appearance, this time at the White House. The president praising West to reporters and talking about his impact on the African American community.
He's been a terrific guy. You know, he loves what we're doing for African American jobs, for so many different things. Median income, as you see, at an all-time high. Poverty level at the best rate, meaning the lowest rate so far. And Kanye is a smart guy, and he sees that.
So we're going to go to our Kanye West ombudsman, Greg Gutfeld. What do you think?
I know what I'm going to address Juan's answer and thought, because I agree with him that Kanye's only going to see Trump because Trump pays attention to him. And I would say that's how reciprocity works. That's how persuasion works. In sales, that's what you succeed by actually being nice to somebody, inviting them over. So this is why Trump, as the real estate tycoon, is succeeding where other politicians aren't, because he knows this salesmanship. Kanye's in a unique position. Number one, he's arguably the biggest male pop star, so he can expend the capital that we don't have. He can take the risks. Number two, he does take the risks. He is serves an example for individuals who will face the mob. He knows that what he's saying is not popular among his peers, but he does it anyway. And last but not least, the guy has like 4 ideas every hour. He's incredibly creative. Let him try politics.
And what do you think about the ideas? Is there something that's going to come out of this meeting?
I like that he has a specific agenda, that there are things that he wants to talk about, and that he doesn't have, these vague platitudes that he wants to spout. I also appreciate that about his wife, and I've never been a big fan of hers or her family's. But the fact that she went in with, a particular list of people that she wanted to have pardoned, including Alice Johnson, and that actually worked, and we're having a conversation, a legitimate conversation about criminal justice reform, I think is fantastic. You wouldn't have expected that out of this administration, certainly not one that named Jeff Sessions as Attorney General of the United States. So I'm hopeful about that. I think the whole thing might, in fact, be a giant trolling performance piece. I don't doubt that he has respect for the president and he is inspired by him, because the president makes people mad every day, but then changes his tone and uses unpredictability in a way that Kanye does. And Kanye said he challenged himself to wear that red hat on SNL to overcome his fears, which I think is very amusing.
Juan?
Well, I mean, to me, this is, a photo op. I mean, we've been through this before. I just worry that there is no agenda. I mean, his agenda, as we know it so far, is, oh, Mr. President, you should talk to Colin Kaepernick and stop calling NFL
That's
players.
a good plan.
Well, I just think this is the craziest thing ever. This is not just about don't call. This is about let's do something. So if he really was going to do something, well, then let's come up with a substantive agenda. But in fact, I think what we see is talk about dragon energy. And I think that right now it's a culture war issue. That apparently Republicans can't talk about the tax cuts or the economy. That ain't working. So go after Taylor Swift.
Yeah.
Taylor Swift is now the worst.
There is a substantive agenda: manufacturing, prison reform, gang
But not
violence.
just manufacturing jobs specifically in Chicago. I think that there is quite a substantive agenda.
What's the agenda?
Well, he's talking about prison reform in particular. Not Matthew Charles. What was the guy's name that is imprisoned unfairly? I don't think
Anthony Weiner?
No. But prison reform, as Kennedy says. But also, he said he wants to go to ask President Trump his ideas for bringing manufacturing jobs back to Chicago, where he grew up. Like, to me, that's better than just a photo op. That's saying, like, here's 2 things that I really want to get done. And if he were to convince the president to stop going after NFL players, wouldn't that be a big deal?
It'd be a big
That
deal.
would, and hopefully the meeting happens at 5 o'clock. A relationship contract taking the internet by storm. Wait till you hear a list of demands some girlfriend made to her boyfriend. Right back.
Don't believe in